Hey guys, welcome to another edition of the 5-Star Zone. I'm your host, Rico Beard, and we're getting very, very close to the end of the Big Ten season, but it is now official. We can go ahead and congratulate the University of Michigan. They tied it earlier than the week, and then they flat out took the Big Ten title. They are the outright champions of the Big Ten with only one loss and a victory over Illinois. And it was a game that I actually was looking forward to on Friday night because I thought this was going to be a battle of two good teams. Well, one team really showed up. Michigan just frustrated the hell out of Illinois, beating them 84-70. Illinois could not get three-point shooting going, and Michigan just took advantage of that. Michigan went out there and really, I think Illinois had the lead at 16-12, and then Michigan goes on a run, and they never relinquished that lead. And you saw it's what made Michigan so far. They're the best team in the Big Ten. They're going to be the number one seed in the Big Ten tournament in Chicago, and it's well earned. They got the job done, and even though they had people in foul trouble, they still found ways to get it done. And as far as Illinois go, like I said, let me pull up those exact stats, but it was not a pretty game for Illinois as they tried to do everything that they could to beat the University of Michigan, but instead Michigan just had too much firepower, too much of everything, really. And Illinois, as I stated before, I thought this was going to be the game where, man, this was going to be a battle of, could have been like the 1 versus 2 seed. I thought Illinois may have a chance to try to sneak in and take a little bit of the title, but no, none of that happened. Hold on, let me pull that up. Here we go. Michigan held Illinois to a whopping 31% from 3, 9 from 29. That's not going to get it done, especially when you play Michigan. Michigan, on the flip side, they were 8 for 22 at 36%, but it was just Michigan out-rebounded Illinois. Michigan got more assists than Illinois. Illinois never got on track. Illinois never found that fifth gear, and you saw it in the game. And Michigan, I give them credit because they went on the road to the Breslin Center, they went on the road to Mackey, and they went on the road to the State Farm Center and Champaign, and they won all 3 games, and they won all 3 games handily. Okay, they weren't close, no buzzer beaters. Michigan's only bugaboo, and I've said it before, when they play the lesser team. It's why when they played Minnesota earlier in the week, they beat them, but they had to pull away from Minnesota because it's like they lose a little bit of focus and they're not as dialed in as they should be dialed in. And when they play the good teams, aside from Duke, they match up, and they match up well. I think they're going to do well in the tournament. If I'm a Michigan fan, here's how I would see it. You got the Big Ten title outright. That's the hardest one to get. If I'm Dusty Man, I'm Michigan, I try to throttle this thing back, and there's a reason that I say that. In that victory over Illinois, you lost LJ Kason, backup point guard, averaged about 8.5 points a game, but he shot 40% from the 3. He was the spark plug coming off the bench. He tore his ACL. I saw it happen on a fast break. When he limps off the court, he comes back in briefly and goes right back out. And you knew it was bad. I knew it was bad when I first saw it, and I was like, ooh, and they brought him back in. Now you got to start to think, okay, Elliot Godot, he's prime. Like you can't let anything happen to him. Now you do have Trey McKinney as the backup, but he's a true freshman. You got to be careful. Most Big Ten coaches tell me, and this is going to be a theme throughout this, when it comes to the Big Ten tournament, make it to Saturday. If you lose on Saturday, you go home, you get some extra day of rest, and you get ready for the tournament. Now, yeah, do you want to win it? If you make it to Sunday, yes. But most coaches say they want to win the first game on Friday. Then on Saturday, it's no love lost if you lose. And if you're Dusty May in Michigan, you're the betting favorite according to Vegas. You may want to think about conserving some energy and not playing everybody because you wear your people down, especially when you got the 1-point guard in Elliot Godot. And I'll give you a great example of that. I go back to, I hearken, I should say, 2019, MSU wins the Big Ten and then they win the Big Ten tournament, and then they make it all the way to the Final Four, and they knock off Duke. But the thing is, it was the wear and tear on Cassius Winston. Cassius had nothing when he got to the Final Four against Texas Tech, and you saw it. He was gassed. His knees they turned into just peanut brittle. Like he had nothing left in the tank. It's good that you made it to the Final Four, but you got to embarrass. If you're Michigan, you may want to start thinking about conserving, especially I would use this time to really get Trey McKinney a bunch of minutes out there so he could get some tournament experience, get some game day experience. And I know you're like, well, you want to win all these games. Okay, guys, if you're Michigan, you're a 1 seed. Okay, number 1 overall, you're probably not going to get unless Duke just ultimately collapses because they beat you. But if that's the case, you're a number 1 seed. Yeah, my thing, I would make sure that Trey McKinney gets as much playing time as possible. Heck, I mean, in your game coming up against Iowa, I may even let him run the show and put him in the starting lineup because you need to see what he could do, especially because you're only got one more game at home at Chrysler. After that, every other game is going to be on the road or at a neutral site. So you need to see how he handles the crowd. That's just me. That's what I would do if I'm Michigan. But like I said, losing LJ Kason was huge because that was the backup guy. And honestly, he was playing more like he was going to take that starting job. And I think there's a lot of Michigan fans out there that would agree with me. He was out playing Cadeau in a lot of these games as of late. That's going to be a major blow. So yeah, if I'm Dusty May, I need to see what Trey can do. And I would get Trey as many minutes as possible, meaningful minutes, not the end of the game type of minutes. I'm talking about, look, you may not start him, but he needs to get in there at least by the 12-minute mark and let him run from the 12-minute mark to maybe the 4-minute mark and just go out there and make the mistakes because you'd rather he make the mistakes now than make the mistakes later. You'd rather have teachable moments now than that one and done. And next thing you know, you're sitting there saying, man, I wish we would have done that. That's just my advice if it were me, if I was Dusty May. We go to Purdue. And Purdue, for as good as Michigan's been playing, Michigan goes so they're rising up. Purdue is falling, and they're falling fast. And I think one of the reasons why Purdue has been losing games, guys, I'm going to say this, and I know it probably won't go over well with a lot of Purdue fans, but I do think that Braden Smith, he may be too focused on trying to become the all-time assist leader. He may be too focused on trying to get that record. And he stopped being a scorer, and he's starting to pass the ball just too much instead of taking games over. You saw that. Look, Purdue lost twice last week. They lost at Mackey to Michigan State. Michigan State hadn't won since 2014. To put it in perspective, Michigan State, it was Gary Harris was on the team. Adrian Payne on the team. Travis Trice, I believe, was on the team. These guys had long since gone. And, Adrian Payne, unfortunately, is not even with us anymore. But that was the last time they won. I'm going to get to what Michigan State did positively. But for Purdue, I think that they've lost that edge. They've lost Braden Smith, man. It's weird. Look, they're on this losing streak. They had a bad week. They haven't been really doing a lot as of late. As a matter of fact, when you look at it, they've lost 3 of their last 4 games. They lost to Michigan, they lost to Michigan State, and they lost to Ohio State. They lost to Ohio State 82-74 in a game that the Buckeyes desperately needed. That game was good for Ohio State because Ohio State, they may have put them in the tournament and off the bubble because Ohio State didn't have a quad 1 victory. Or they may have had one. I think the Northwestern win now qualifies as a quad 1, but it's very fluid. But you know what? Beating Purdue, you ain't got to worry about the fluidity of it. They're going to be in thanks to that. They're going to champion that win. And then they got one more game coming up against Indiana, who desperately needed a game as well, and they lost. But if you beat Indiana, I think you're in. But back to Purdue, I think that Braden Smith is really focused a little bit too much, and you're seeing it in the game where he's not as aggressive. At the end of the Michigan State game, where the old Braden Smith would have went out there and hit that game-winning shot at home at Mackey, but instead, Tom Izzo puts Cohen Carr out there, and it was like Braden wanted no parts of Cohen Carr. He just stopped, immediately froze, and shot like a 40 to 45-foot three. And it's like, dude, you had way more time on the clock. Like, what are you doing? But I don't see the aggressiveness going towards the basket. He's trying to get his other teammates involved, which is cool. Kaufman Wren is helping him out, but Fletcher Lawyer is not. Fletcher Lawyer he's kind of regressed. As a matter of fact, in the state game, Fletcher sat for a large portion of the game. He was back in for the final play of the game, but he sat for about 9 minutes in the final 9 minutes of that game. I think if you're Purdue, you got to just tell Braden, forget about the assist. If the assists happen, they happen. But you got to be aggressive. You got to score. You got to take it to the basket because you're one of the main guys on this team. And I just think that he kicks it into gear a little bit too late as he's trying to facilitate the ball to everybody else. And I think it's that record, man. He really wants it. And you can tell he wants it, but at what to the detriment of the team? I mean, they've not been looking good as of late. So for Purdue, you're going the wrong way. They were on the 2 seed line. I think they may have dropped to the 3 or the 4 seed line, depending on what happens at the end of the year. But they are going in the wrong direction. Like I said, they lose to Ohio State. And they lose to Ohio State 82-74 at Ohio State. And Ohio State needed that victory badly. Ohio State went out there and they got it done. And, look, Braden scored 20 points, but it's just more so I've seen him take over games when it just comes to scoring and not just that's just me. That's how I see it. I think he needs to focus more on scoring because he's going to be the reason why. Until Fletcher Lawyer kicks it back into gear, that's going to be problematic. But for Ohio State, they got everything that they needed and more. Ohio State went out there and they got the job done. And again, they were desperate. They were the desperate team. And you saw they were the desperate team because they want into the tournament. And it looks like now they're going to make it in the tournament at a record. Looks like they're 18-11. That was a feather in their cap. Now, the other team that's trending, Purdue is trending down. Michigan State is trending up. They had a great week. They swept the state of Indiana. They beat Purdue, as I said, 76-74. They hadn't won in Mackey in a long time, and they may have played one of their best games ever. It was very low turnovers for MSU, and that's saying something because in these 2 games that they've won, didn't turn the ball over a lot, especially against Purdue on the road. Mackey's one of the toughest places to play, and Michigan State turns the ball over all of 6 times. It was back and forth the entire game. It was a fun game to watch, especially if you didn't have a horse in the race. Neither team, I think, had a lead bigger than, 5. No, I take that back. The biggest lead a team had was 8 points. State had a lead of 8. Purdue had a lead of 7, but it was back and forth the entire game. And then kudos to Tom Izzo and sealing the deal because at the end, neither team could score a basket. They were stuck. They were stuck at 76-74. Cam Ward gets a great rebound, but it's like, he got fouled. And if you're Purdue, I don't even think you realize you fouled the perfect person because Cam Ward has had problems shooting free throws. And yeah, he hits 1 free throw and you got a guard for the 3. He hits 2 free throws in this ball game. He missed both free throws, gave Purdue a chance, but then Izzo, after a timeout, Purdue takes it to the sideline, calls timeout. Izzo calls another timeout, and he smartly puts Cohen Carr on Braden Smith and says, Braden, you're not getting around him. And Braden froze. He had a brain freeze. He jacks up a shot. He had more time to dribble in closer, but I guess he thought Cohen Carr was going to block his shot. He heaves it up. It goes off to the left, and Michigan State walks out there with a victory, 76-74 in a place they hadn't won, like I said, in 12 years. Think about this perspective. 3 whole recruiting classes have gone through MSU, never seeing a victory in Mackey. Then they follow that up with playing a desperate team, very similar to what Purdue did against Ohio State. Michigan State plays Indiana. Indiana is desperate. MSU took the lead and they never relinquished it. They led wire to wire against the Hoosiers, and it was a very impressive victory for Izzo, for Michigan State, because every time that they used their height, Jackson Kohler, hey, welcome to the party. Don't know where you've been, but you were there. He took advantage of the small lineups. He scored early. He scored often. He scored in a bunch. 21 points, 13 rebounds. That's the Jackson Kohler Spartan fans have been waiting to see. That's the Jackson Kohler we've been saying, where are you at, son? He's been MIA on the back of milk cartons. Well, somebody found him. They dropped him off to Tom Izzo. They dropped him off to the Breslin Center, and Izzo made sure that he did. Now, Izzo said the first four plays were designed to get him back into the game, because Tom realizes you're not going far without Jackson Kohler. Look, Jeremy Fears can only take you so far, and he's really transformed his game. But as Fears went up, Kohler went down, and it was like, no, that's not going to work. Izzo, yeah, he needed Kohler to play better. Kohler did play better. You've seen Cooper play better. You've seen Carr, but Kohler has just been on the outs. But 21 points, 13 rebounds is exactly what you need. When you're getting that type of production from him, that team looked unstoppable. Now, the other thing that made him look unstoppable was Kurt Tang. Jordan Scott gets into foul trouble early, and Kurt Tang took advantage of his minutes. 18 points. And let me get this right. 6 from 8 from the field, including 6 from 8 from three-point line. All he shot was threes. He hit them all. And the two that he missed, one that he missed, like barely missed, like he was on fire. They even called, it was funny because the announcer called him Wu-Tang. And I was like, man, that's actually pretty good. I wish I'd have thought about that. But yeah, Wu-Tang. Kurt Tang was on fire. Season high, career high, 18 points coming off the bench. And the other thing for MSU, look, let's face it. When they can hit and go 50% from the three-point line and make 12 three-pointers, they're unstoppable. Now, if you're a Spartan fan, you know you don't see that often. So, but yeah, when you see that, man, you know that was going to be their night. Indiana closed it to 5 a couple times, and Michigan State, Michigan State immediately came down, whether it was Tang or whether it was Fierce, hit a 3, pushed it back out to 8. Indiana could never get over that hump. Indiana needed that game to stay in the run for the tournament because they wanted the first 4 in or first 4 out, depending on whose bracket you were looking at. But now they have a game against Ohio State where it's almost both teams desperately need it. Indiana needs it to get back on that bubble. Ohio State needs it to solidify their spot and to get ready for the Big Ten tournament. But like I said, speaking of the Big Ten tournament, look, it looks like Michigan's going to be the 1 seed. It looks like the 2 seed is probably going to be Nebraska. It looks like the 3 seed is probably going to be MSU. And this is all, I think Michigan is locked in. I don't think that they can not be the 1 seed. As far as Nebraska and Michigan State, they do what they need to do. And I think even Michigan State can lose to Michigan in the final game of the year, and they'll still be a 3 seed so long as they beat Rutgers. But that's what you're looking at right there. And I think the 4 seed, you're probably looking at, would it be Purdue? But Purdue is not really doing that well. But I think Purdue would end up becoming the 4th seed in that battle. So that's just something to look out for. But yes, there we go. No, Illinois. I'm sorry. Illinois would be the 4 seed. Purdue would be the 5. Wisconsin's looking at 6. Ohio State the 7. UCLA 8. Iowa 9. Indiana the 10 seed. So that's what you're looking at right now. And finally, another bit of weird news. But I mean, if you've been following USC basketball, and let's face it, not a lot of people have. But Chad Baker-Mazara transfer from Auburn for last year. Auburn was number 1 overall seed. He transfers. He's one of the top scorers of the USC Trojan program. He's been off and on, and I just think he's been the coach's doghouse all year. I remember the game at Michigan State where I don't even think he started in that game, and he played like a horrible game. And we couldn't figure if he was hurt, if he was injured, what happened. Well, he gets injured in the game against Nebraska at home, and he scored, like I said, he scored, I think he was at 17 points. He gets injured. He comes back, and then he sits adjacent in the stands, not on the bench, but like in the stands, like away from his team. The very next day, USC comes out with a statement and says, yeah, he's no longer with the program. I think the coach has just had enough of his shenanigans. But it was a very that situation was very tenuous at best. You could tell something was going on there. Look, he's 26 years old, and I guess you kind of figured he doesn't have time to be playing games. He came to USC because I think he wanted to be the man, and I guess, he wasn't buying into the Trojan way. Gilbert Arenas' kid is playing for the team. Gilbert Arenas comes out there, former NBA players, like, hey, go apologize to Chad and get him back on the team because we're trying to make the tournament. But I give the coach credit. I mean, you got a standard, and the standard is the standard. And if somebody's not living up to that standard, if you're not sitting with the team, like I didn't understand that at all, and it leads me to believe that there was actually more to that. But yeah, they lose 82-67 at home to Nebraska, and that was his final game. He was done. They came out with the statement. So USC is also another bubble team. They're going to have to do it without their two leading scorers. One's injured and one is kicked off the team. So we'll see what happens when it comes there. But yeah, we're coming to the stretch run. This is the final week of the Big Ten season. Final weekend is coming up. I think the final game, Michigan State at Chrysler Arena on a Sunday night. And then after that, we get ready for the Big Ten tournament in Chicago. But yeah, like I said, Michigan locked up the number 1 seed. They're flat out champions. If I'm Michigan, Trey McKinney will get a ton of minutes. I need him to be prepared. I need him to be ready when you're going into the tournament. You need to play him as much as possible, especially, game against Iowa that you have, especially, maybe the first game in the Big Ten tournament and even the first game of the NCAA tournament where you're going up against a 16 seed. Kid needs to get as much experience as possible at running that point guard, because if anything goes to Elliot Cadeau, you're done. Hey, look, Michigan State is finding that out right now with Jeremy Fears, because Okechukwu is done and Wojcik is the backup point guard, and he's a step down. Let's just call it what it is. Yeah, if Fears goes down, MSU's in trouble, just like Michigan would be, except for I think that McKinney is much better than Wojcik, which is why I said you need to get him in there, because Michigan State's been dabbling around trying to get Jordan Scott to run a little bit of point. He got into foul trouble where I think he would have probably ran a lot more point at Indiana, but, foul trouble. But the blessing was Wu-Tang came in, 18 points, hit 6 3-pointers off the bench. All right. Much more coming up in the final week of the Big Ten as we get ready to wrap up this season. But for now, I'm your host, Rico Beard. Thanks for watching, liking, and subscribing the 5 Star Zone.